In Blue Lock, during the second selection, my boy GOAT Isagi makes a pivotal decision in this series to play with the 6'3" king from Team V, Nagi Seishiro. What if though, Isagi instead stuck with his original plan and decided to play with the superhero Soul Reaper, Kunigami. The story would pick up immediately after second selection, where Isagi would link up with his #1 fanboy and #1 glazer, Bachira. After understanding that second selection will require teams of 3, Bachira asks Isagi who they should pick up to be their third teammate. While in Isagi's head, he's wondering when he said he wanted to form a team with the dribble monster in the first place. The first 2 players that they consider would either be the pretty speedster Chigiri or the superhero Kunigami, deciding that whichever one makes it first will join them. But plot twist, my white-haired king Nagi Seishiro has entered the playing field, and here's where the story takes a turn. At this point, Nagi would once again offer Isagi a spot to join him and Ryo. Ryo being the biggest Nagi glazer there is though, lets Nagi know that this might not be the best plan, as he thinks Isagi is really just kinda trash. Nagi is then forced to remind Ryo that Isagi is the one who dropped them off and caused them their first loss ever, and that he should put a little more respect on Isagi's name. Bachira then looks at Isagi and is like, well, the choice is yours. Isagi, being the loyal dog that he is though, refuses, insists on playing with his homeboy Bachira, and has to decline Nagi. And Nagi's like, you know what, that's fine, I'll just join you then. And Ryo can't believe what he just heard. His man Nagi is really trying to drop him for the new kid on the block. Nagi informs Ryo that while Ryo did teach him soccer, they lost and need to push beyond their current limits if they plan to become Japan's best striker. Ryo, accepting that Nagi's willing to drop him for Isagi and Bachira, accepts his fate. Bachira asks Isagi what they should do, leaving the decision in Isagi's hands. After quick thought, Isagi declines Nagi's offer, which comes not only to the shock of Nagi, but also Bachira and Ryo. Isagi tells Nagi the third spot on their team is reserved for a member of Team Z that he is confident that they can make it to the next selection with. This would have been within Isagi's character still, because it's even stated during the anime that he would feel reassured if they had gotten Chigiri or Kunigami on their team, as that would be a solid plan. Now that Nagi's offer has been declined, he rejoins a still defeated Ryo in order to regroup and decide on who their next choice should be. At this point, Ryo would still be devastated that Nagi was so easily willing to drop him and choose Isagi over him, but he would also be reluctant that he still gets to play with Nagi and have Nagi on his team. Bachira and Isagi would also continue to wait and be rejoined by either Kunigami or Chigiri, whichever appears first. After the passing of another 5 minutes, Bachira and Isagi would finally be joined by their former team member Chigiri. After some warm welcomes and explaining how they need to form a team of 3, the group would then be approached once again by none other than Nagi and Ryo. This time though, they would not be extending an offer to Isagi. They would be extending it to no other than the speedster Chigiri. The two explain how after playing with Zantetsu, they perfectly know how to incorporate Chigiri into the team, and how this would be the best option, not only for Chigiri to pass second selection, but also for him to go even beyond what he was able to do with Isagi and Team Z. Chigiri thinks on their offer for a brief moment about it, and how he doesn't want to abandon his friends he's made along this journey. But Chigiri also understands his reason for being here in the first place was never to make friends, having a flashback of how Isagi was able to throw Chigiri to the side when it came to winning. He gives a brief apology to Bachira and Isagi before taking a step to join Ryo and Nagi, who move forward onto the next selection. Shocked by the loss of their friend that has now become an enemy, they must wait again now for the superhero Kunigami. More time passes and the one and only Kunigami walks through the door to the second selection. Isagi and Bachira approach Kunigami and give him the breakdown on how Chigiri has chosen to join Ryo and Nagi instead of Isagi and Bachira. Kunigami becomes frustrated, not only that he is the team's second option, but also that he was the last of his former teammates to make it to second selection. This frustration lights a fire under Kunigami, who is gladly willing to team up with his former Team Z companions and prove that Chigiri underestimates how strong they really are. The new formed team of Isagi, Bachira, and Kunigami step through the door to second selection to find their next opponents. We then cut back to some familiar faces of Chigiri, Nagi, and Ryo, who have been searching for their next opponents in hopes of finding a new teammate. Ryo is searching for a team that seems to have a strong player, but the team as a whole is also weak enough for them to beat. This frustrates Nagi, who immediately confronts Ryo, telling him that with his current mindset, they can never keep their promise to become Japan's best striker. Ryo, not understanding Nagi's new ego, first wanting to play with Isagi and Bachira rather than stay on a team with his best friend that introduced him to the sport, and now Nagi going against Ryo's plan for who to challenge. Ryo leaves Nagi and Chigiri, telling them that he will leave it up to them to decide who they play as he goes off and sits alone. Nagi and Chigiri go over the type of player they want to join them as we then cut back to our MC. Entering through the doors of the 3v3 room, Isagi scouts around for any familiar faces or players that seem like worthy opponents. In this timeline, Isagi's team is too late to challenge Ren and the other top 2 players in Blue Lock, as they were stuck in the waiting room waiting on Kunigami. Due to this, Isagi never takes his first loss to Ren during second selection and loses Bachira. This also affects Isagi because he was so confident he could take on the best players, but after losing to Ren, he realizes how much stronger he has to become in order to become Japan's best striker. Who will Isagi and team choose to play in their first match of the second selection? Well, that choice is not up for Isagi to choose, as their next opponents have already chosen them and been patiently waiting for them to walk through the door. Isagi is approached by none other than Nagi and Chigiri. Nagi tells Isagi if he refuses to play on his team, then he will force him to join him. Nagi cannot control this urge he has to play with Isagi, as he's the first person to make him feel defeat, and there are no other players that seem worth Nagi's time. We have to remember, Ren's team was filled with the first 3 players to complete the first part of second selection. RU's original plan was for their team to go up against the next best players below them, which would be 4, 5, and 6. With the top 6 players all being removed from second selection already, the next best player coming in at number 7 was none other than Nagi Seishiro. Nagi had no interest in any of the players below him and only had his eyes set on defeating Isagi. Chigiri speaks to his former friends but now opponents and says he's glad to see them again. Specifically, Chigiri is looking at Kunigami as he was the last to join them. Chigiri agrees with Nagi that he also wants Isagi to join them, as Chigiri not only wants revenge on Isagi for how he treated him during their match in first selection, but also because Isagi brings out the best in him and allowed him to awaken and run full speed again in first selection. Before Isagi can even decline or accept the challenge though, it is Kunigami who comes to the front to accept their challenge. Still flustered at the fact that he feels like a backup plan, he wants to prove not only to his team, but also to himself that they made the right decision to have him join their team. Isagi can't help but sit back and smile, as he was hoping to play them anyway. And so, the stage is set for the face-off of Isagi, Bachira, and Kunigami to go up against Nagi, Ryo, and Chigiri. If you would like me to continue this what if storyline, let's try and get this video to 50 likes for part 2. I tried my best to keep the characters within their canon, but obviously to make this what if work, there did have to be some minimal changes to get all the pieces to fall into place. Let me know who you think will win this match and who will end up switching teams. Until then, I'll catch y'all in the next one.